Hello and welcome to Kicking Tires. My name is Jimmy,
And I'm Justin.
and today we have some news. Not a lot, but some news. Acura has released their information of the MDX Type S. There's some new releases. Toyota made a little off-roady type vehicle that's kind of cool. It's not really off-roady, but it has an X in it, so it's kind of cool. Rivian went public. We can talk a little bit about that. And also, we want to talk a little bit about the RAV4 project as well. But first, the Accra Mdx. So the Mdx has been out for a little bit. For 2021, you already got the new generation of Mdx. But for 2022, you get the Type S.
Ooh,
And it's the performance variant of
yeah.
the Mdx. Now, okay, so the Type S nameplate we saw on the TLX, we see this on the NSX as well. And I mean, okay, I don't really get it for the MDX. So yes, it has more power. The standard one at I think 260, nope, 290 horsepower. I mean, the standard MDX at 290 horsepower, this at 65 horsepower more. It's not that much,
Well,
but it's
they
the
need to
torque.
justify using this new engine. Like Honda doesn't develop new engines very often.
Mm.
Um, and so it can't just be TLX Type S. They've got to include another model in the mix. And this being the heaviest car they make, it makes sense to put the highest power output motor they make, I think.
Yeah, that's really the only reason why it's in here, though. I think. Like, I drove the MDX and I didn't think it needed more power. I thought it's a fine vehicle as is. Um, because even like, of course, no one's driven this, but with just 65 additional horses, it's not going to be a competition to like an AMG product or M Performance product would be. So it's not like a true performance SUV. And the other Japanese manufacturers, well, they don't make a performance variant of their SUVs.
Yeah, I feel like that's a missed opportunity because the Japanese products are always kind of an alternative product to what the Europeans offer, right? And the Europeans all have cars like the X3Ms, the Macan turbos, Cayenne turbos. X5M's always been pretty popular. It's been popular for a decade now. All the Mercedes AMG SUVs, Range Rover SVRs, everyone's got their hot version. Even Audi now has the SQ7 and RSQ8 even. And so I think there is a demand for really sporty SUVs. And this is kind of a step in that direction. Revised suspension, like it's a completely different air suspension with
Yeah.
I think that's kind of nice. So it should drive noticeably different from a regular MDX, hopefully at least. I don't know. I think I'm not against it. I think we need the Japanese manufacturers stepping up in this department. They cannot just recycle the same drivetrains and over again and just expect the public to keep buying up their products. I think you need to, excite things a bit, and this kind of does it. I think it's 90 pounds-feet extra torque. Like,
That's
um,
that's that's
you
the
know,
that's where the difference would be is the torque.
Exactly. Well, the difference is there, but also not just because we're talking about peak numbers is 65 horsepower gain, but I'm sure curve gains with a turbo motor is going to be significant too, where,
Mhm.
at 2000 RPM, you want to pass someone on the highway, that's going to do that much better of a job. It may not show, it's a 20% increase peak, but
Mhm.
in those lower RPMs, we might see a significant upgrade there.
Well, that's kind of what I was curious on when the MDX first came out. I said this in my review. I I was wondering why they didn't put the RDX engine in it. Because they stuck with the 3.5 liter, or is it 3.5 or 3.7? I think they went back down to 3.5 before.
3.5, yeah.
Yeah. So they went with a 3.5 liter V6. That's the same one that was in the previous generation MDX. But in the RDX, the TLX, they have an excellent 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. It makes very similar horsepower as well as better torque rating. It makes more sense to use that powertrain in the MDX as the base engine and this as the optional engine, I think.
Now, at this point, I think so, but I think maybe they're looking at the sound and the refinement. That 2-liter motor is not a good sounding engine. It's quite buzzy,
Mm.
and I've heard it with like every exhaust, and just nothing makes it refined. And that seems kind of counterintuitive for this type of product.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
So
know.
what's nice about the Type S is it's not only just power and the suspension, they did upgrade the brakes as well. You get Brembo big brakes on the front, not on the rear from what I can see. And then in terms of tire, it's actually decently wide, 275 40 21s.
Hmm.
275s are pretty meaty for an SUV of this size.
Yeah,
Generally, like you would see that on like X3s, at least a front tire, I believe is like a 265 or 275.
yeah.
But yeah, it's decent.
Yeah, the X3, the sporty versions get a 275 rear tire now. They're using a staggered setup on those, and then the X5s get a 275 front. GLE is also running 275s front, and they go up to 315, 325 in the rear for some of those BMW and Mercedes products. I think another thing with the Japanese brand, they always try to keep maintenance reasonable, and so yeah, also with the TLX Type S, I think it only gets Brembos on the front. The Type R even only gets Brembos on the front. It uses the standard caliper on the rear. Um, Maybe because
I mean,
they're pragmatic about it, right? They
yeah,
don't. It won't reduce your braking distances at all by putting a fancy monoblock caliper on the rear and figuring out how to do a parking brake separately, because the rear brake is typically the parking brake, and I'm guessing this has the electronic parking brake motor on it as well. So when you switch it all, you got to redesign that whole system. It doesn't really make sense. It drives up the cost. Speaking of cost, I think, you know, again, comparing to the Europeans to get this kind of performance level, you're paying a lot more. Like not even 5-10 grand. You're paying like 30-40 grand more to get into a
yeah.
European SUV with similar kind of performance chops to it and
Well,
size.
this would be like X5 40 type performance.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of space, I mean, this is huge compared
Yeah,
to what the X5 offers. Because the X5, I mean, yes, you can fit some of the X5s with the third row, but really is for 2 rows. It's not really made for passengers in that third row. But yeah. Oh, I actually want to talk a little bit about some upcoming releases that we can't talk about too much today because we don't know much about them. But tomorrow, Acura is releasing the Integra. That I'm very excited for. It should be basically a fancy Civic, but still excited for that. But the one that it's more relatable, I think, for a lot of people these days is the new Kia EV9. So the EV9, it's like the big boy electric vehicle, very similar to like the Telluride. There's going to be a Hyundai version of that as well, but no. Oh, Ionic 9, I think they're going to call it EV9 and Ionic 9. So that should be coming tomorrow. So that's super exciting. And then November 15th is my favorite, Mazda. Mazda's releasing their CX-50, and I can't wait for that as well. There's some teaser images floating around. So far, there's literally nothing I can see, but I'm giddy with excitement because I love new Mazdas. So I
another
can't wait to
Mazda
see that.
crossover. Yeah,
Yes, of course, there's another crossover. It's a CX nameplate, so of course, there's another crossover. But the CX-50 is going to be CX-5 sized, but based on the Mazda 3 and CX-30 platform. I'm sure it's elongated and made bigger and whatnot. We should see the same engine options in that. So the 2.5 turbo and regular 2.5. But yeah, super excited. Can't wait. November 15th for the CX-50, November 11th for Kia EV9 and the Integra. But
yeah.
let's talk. Actually, do you have anything to add to that before I move on?
Well, no, I mean the LA Auto Show is coming up, so I think
Mm.
that's where we'll see a few debuts here and there. That's in about a week and a half time. So yeah, we'll have more exciting news. We don't have that much going on this week,
No, definitely
and
not.
so we've stretched our horizons to Europe to talk about the Toyota Aygo X.
So
Uh,
the iGo X, the reason why we want to talk about this is it's a very neat little vehicle, and there's a bunch of reviews popping up this week about it. But the iGo X is essentially like a Yaris, but taller, but not a CHR that we get here, because the iGo is smaller than the Yaris. It's
yeah.
it's
Is
actually,
it an Igo or Igo Cross?
so maybe it's called iGo Cross rather than
Maybe
iGo
we're just
X.
we're just that
We don't know.
uncultured. We don't because we don't have a showroom that has one here.
Yeah, but it looks absolutely fantastic. It has your favorite color, which is a green.
Yeah,
It's like this dark forest green, and like the back of it is blacked out with orange on it. Like it's super cool looking, but it's
pretty
tiny.
quirky. It's
It's
it's tiny. Yeah,
it is tiny.
it is a city car. That is the
Yeah,
kicker. It has virtually no trunk. 145 inches long. So if you thought like a Ford Fiesta or Toyota Yaris was big, this is over a foot shorter than that. So it is tiny, and the engine is equally tiny. 1 liter engine, 72 horsepower. I didn't even know they still made engines that gutless. Um, 69 pound-feet of torque available with a CVT or a 5-speed manual, and it's a unique design. Um, they've splattered black all over it. It's like you get to pick. It's kind of like the Smart actually in terms of color scheme,
mm,
like a Smart 4.4, where it has kind of a black ring around the doors and stuff, and then your bumpers, your hood, your doors are now those are your body color. Um, Also, like a Smart, you can get it with a power retractable canvas roof.
yeah, that
Uh,
looks really cool.
yeah, kind of like a Wrangler as well. If maybe people don't know what the Smart one is like, but there's other cars that have those. Targeted fuel consumption of 4.7 liters per 100k on the European cycle. Now here's my dilemma with this vehicle is that we have because do we need a car like that? Do I miss a car like this in North America? Personally, I'm just like, well, we had like the Prius C, we had the Scion IQ.
I was gonna say this has like IQ vibes
It has IQ vibes. It has a more usable back seat for sure. It
and
is a,
doors.
it is like, it's like 2 feet longer than an IQ. But at least the IQ had like 100 horsepower. Right. It had a 1.5 liter engine. This has 72.
A whole
Uh,
0.5 liters more.
which the IQ was already dangerous enough to drive on highway speeds.
Yeah.
But 72 horsepower, like that is strictly a city car at that point.
Oh, absolutely.
Um, it is light. It is the lightest in its class. So that's a nice thing. But 4.7 liters per 100k, that's what you would get in a Prius C, right? Like the Prius C is better than an IQ on the highway. Not great, but usable.
Mm.
Like it's not the most confident car you could drive on a freeway, but it works well enough for people that do 90% city and 10% highway. I think the
Yeah.
occasional highway run. If you ever leave, the 10-kilometer radius from your urban city center, uh, the Prius C can do that, and managing the same fuel economy and having a bigger trunk and being cheap too, right? Like the Igo X is not that cheap. The Prius C was a very cheap car. I don't think there's any real demand for this type of vehicle in North America,
Oh, not at
especially in
all.
the States.
No, no.
But I do
Like
want to see like an improved version of the Prius C, one that has a little bit better highway manners, a little bit better interior,
it's called the
or
Honda
that
HRV.
I guess so. But
It
yeah,
is because the new HRV is going to be a hybrid. We
are
know
we
that.
getting it?
We don't know if we have to get it. We don't know if the Canadian
They've been
Honda
teasing
whatever.
the current gen CRV hybrid. The
We just don't
current
get
gen, we
so
don't
that
get that.
we don't get that in Canada. They get it in the US. We never got a straight answer from Honda of why
Yeah.
it's not available. But yeah, I would think the HRV would come with that hybrid motor in the future. It only makes sense.
But then you're driving a
Um,
Honda hybrid. It's not the same. The
but it has
Toyota hybrid master race here
yeah,
because
not
it's a
wrong,
superior
but a
product.
Honda may have VTEC in it, and for some people, that makes a difference. Some people, not you. You clearly don't care about the VTEC noises that comes from the engine.
The IV Tech noises are like virtually it's not a DC2R. Like it doesn't have that VTEC noise you're talking about.
Not wrong.
Yeah.
Not wrong. All right, let's talk about Rivian here.
Yeah.
I have the page of Rivian pulled up, but we're not talking about their vehicles, the R1T and the R1S, although I really would like to drive one. It looks
Yeah.
so cool.
I think
But
we've mentioned Rivian in the past. They're really cool.
they're
Uh,
they're just absolutely amazing. They they lent out their cars to a bunch of YouTubers recently.
mhm.
The R1T and like MKBHD had one, Jerry Rig, everyone like a lot of people had them and they took them off road and it was cool. But I was
Yeah.
actually quite surprised to see the size of the vehicle because I thought the Rivian was bigger than that, but it's actually the size of like a Tacoma. I didn't think it was that small. I without comparisons, vehicles next to each other, it's
Well,
hard to say.
and it's got triple the interior volume of a Tacoma,
Well,
right? The R1T is you can if you're over 5'5", you will fit in an R1T. You will not in a Tacoma. Like you have to perform some acrobats to fit into a Tacoma. Uh,
not wrong, but we're not here to talk about the cars because they went public, right? Was that just today?
Yeah, so the IPO was released today. They offered 153 million shares. They raised a lot of money, a lot of money. This is the biggest IPO since this is the biggest IPO from an American company since Facebook, and it's the biggest IPO since Alibaba in 2014. So it's
Wow.
been a long time since we've seen something this size, and the reason why is obvious, right? Well, actually, there's a few really good reasons why this IPO was so huge. One, Amazon owns 20% of it. Ford owns 12%, and these Ford is the sells the most cars compared to anyone in North America. Amazon is Amazon; like, they are
Huge.
ridiculously huge, and mostly I think the excitement and why investors are so eager to jump on it is going to be Tesla. Everyone wants this to be the next Tesla because Tesla stock, as you know, has been insane over the last 3 years. Like it makes sense. Like Tesla moves so many cars. Uh, at least in the EV segment, they are no longer a small automaker. Like in terms of
No.
market share for EV. So Tesla, people made a lot of money on that, and people want to be able to do that with R1T and R1S. Rivian is being taking a very conservative approach, right? Because Tesla, they're very different companies in the sense that Tesla, a lot of big claims, a lot of big projections. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do this. We're gonna meet this price point, which recently all the Teslas went up in price. I think someone was saying that the Model 3 and the Model Y, they've gone up like 20% in price. Like
They've
it's
gone
now
up, yeah.
jumped up a significant amount. That's why the used ones are doing really well. If you've got your hands on a Model 3 or Model Y earlier this year, you're in the money. But yeah, Rivian's target is only to deliver 1,000 cars by the end of this year. They're still they're still in the process of working out a lot of the legalities and kind of their delivery model. And so they've only delivered less than 500 vehicles this year, and they've got another 500 to go in a month, and that's not going to pay for anything, 500 cars, because they're looking at spending billions, which is good because I think they've raised over 8 or 10 billion today. And so it's exciting times. I don't know how legit of an investment this is going to be. This is not the podcast for that. For investment advice, we don't know. We did not invest in Rivian, for better or for worse. I think it's a bit of a gamble because, okay, with their valuation as it stands today, they just came onto the market. They're now worth more than Ford. They're worth more than GM. Um, which these are huge companies that make a lot of cars. They have a lot of employees. They have a lot of dealerships, a big dealer network, and Rivian is looking to make to deliver 1,000 cars by the end of 2021. I know the local Tesla dealership in Vancouver will probably deliver 1,000 cars in a week, and so that is the scale that we're talking about. Is this overvalued or is everyone else just undervalued? I don't know, but that's why I'm curious if this is going to be a good investment, because to me, whether or not they can execute it is one thing, but also like to build that brand loyalty that Tesla has, the brainwashing that Tesla has, like, you know what? It's a good day that I'm talking about, because I was driving a Tesla all day today, and I'm like, damn, this cruise control is so good. I don't have, like, it comes to a red light. I just set it, okay, max speed 60K, car in front leaves, and I'm just like, oh, okay. I don't even have the full self driving, and I'm like, this is so good. I I love driving Tesla, but um, there is a lot of Kool-Aid associated with that brand, and
Kool-Aid.
to get to that level, you need to have that hype and that brand loyalty and the brainwashing that comes with it, that anything they do is gold. And they have so many dedicated fans that Rivian doesn't have yet, right? Because they're not the Kleenex of EVs that Tesla is. Tesla is the standard, and everyone else is just catching up. And even the giant manufacturers they know that. So whether or not they can execute in terms of build quality, customer service, parts availability, that's something that Tesla's still struggling on. Is not only are their cars not that well built, every Tesla owner knows that. Even no matter how brainwashed you are, some people are like, oh, you buy this car for tech. Some people are like, damn, I paid X number of thousands for this car and it's built like this. It's built worse than a $15,000 Toyota Aygo. It's true, but it is still a really good car, I think, for the engineering and the tech behind it. But yeah, whether or not this can fulfill that dream of Rivian being a legitimate automaker making X many. I think they have pretty high goals long term. I think by 2030 they want to be making like 1 million vehicles a year. They want to be delivering that many vehicles a year. But to get there, we don't know. And they came out at a bad time because it's a chip shortage. Everyone knows supply is really weak right now. So yeah, I think, yeah, I really don't know if it's a wise investment, but I love their vehicles. Like, I think they look the part. They look different enough, and they look like an electric vehicle, and they're legitimate off-road. I mean, 14 inches, 14 and a half inches of ground clearance. You're not getting that from anything, because you're going to be dragging a differential, but because it is an electric car, it's just different.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty legit. I like the concept behind the R1S and R1T, and I think even for this price, it is acceptable, reasonable.
Unfortunately, the one I want is over 100K. which means that it's a little too pricey for my pockets, but maybe
Yeah, it's
maybe in the
100K,
future.
but you've got to compare that with what a Grand Cherokee L, or I don't
Oh
even
yeah,
know
no,
what.
this is well worth the 100K. Not saying it's not, just saying it's 100K.
Yeah,
Speaking of high budgets, let's talk about our off-road project. So just the actually was it yesterday? Nope, today is Wednesday. We went on
Sunday, really.
Sunday. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shows you how much I can remember. Let's go here, and then we go here, and we go here. It's already you talking right at the start. I don't want it
Oh,
ads.
now you got that. Well, go to the J.Mak YouTube channel and you can watch his video on the off-road project on our maiden voyage. We brought both RAV4s up to Hale Creek. Just trying to get a feel for what this car can do in relatively stock form. All we've done so far, capability-wise, is just tires. Um, Tires mean a lot. Tires is probably the biggest thing you need on any off-roader, but that's all we've done, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have done other things, but it's like maintenance things.
Yeah.
I
But
can't
as
remember
far as
now,
to
but
make it more capable, that's all
yeah,
we've done.
the only thing that to make him just survive this trip. Actually, you know what? If we had, you know what? I think if we had the stock tires, I don't think we would have made it up some of those hills. I don't think it would have just provided enough traction for us. So yeah, definitely
Mhm.
tires were necessary. So Hale Creek isn't like a super crazy gnarly rock crawling type trail. There are some like small like crossings.
Turn-offs.
Yeah,
You can turn off and hit like more difficult obstacles, I guess. But the main route is not that intense. There's a few river crossings and a lot of stuff that if you had a Wrangler Rubicon or any TRD Pro or something like that, you would do it with your eyes closed, I
yeah.
think.
I I think yeah. No, you're right. Because that first obstacle that we hit, if the vehicle was had longer front and rear overhangs, it definitely would not have made it. So I'm thinking like Outback Wilderness would not have a good time there because the Outback Wilderness has extremely long front and rear overhangs, and it definitely would have got caught up there already. So it's not designed for like stock vehicles. It's designed for vehicles that are decently
Yeah.
capable. And the RAV4s were actually, both of them ran pretty well that day. We did had some trouble with the older 2003 RAV4 Chili because we had a oil light that came on as well as a check engine light. It got me quite worried. As you know, we're trying to exit the trail itself. All these lights start coming on, and I was like a little worried that we weren't
Yeah.
gonna make it. But it turns out to be okay. Everything's fine. Justin, like you said, you checked it out.
I think it's a clogged oil filter so far. I changed that last night and I haven't seen it. I've been driving it a little bit today and last night and haven't seen the light come back. So I think that's a good sign. I think what happened is that taking it off road, this is city car. It was used in literally city center, like 4 blocks from City Hall, its whole life. And so it's a downtown city core vehicle. It doesn't get floored very often, and I think putting it through its paces, we kind of shook some things loose and kind of got the oil filter clogged up, and so we're having pressure issues. But the car still runs good, and I think after we address a few more maintenance issues, we're gonna. I can't wait to get the suspension on, but yeah, we're gonna do a timing cover most likely next Wednesday. Actually, I'm gonna get the timing cover dealt with, as well as doing a drive belt, and then I'm gonna do one more oil change because the thing is, when we did the valve cover on this car, the valve cover was pretty dirty, and the car had been maintained by the dealership, but the dealership's doing 8,000 K intervals on dyno oil or conventional 530 oil, which is not that exceptional as far as how well it cleans, how well it protects, compared to what we normally use at the shop, and we only recommend an 8,000K interval. And so I'm hoping that by catching up a little bit with the oil changes, I think the car will be run a little bit happier, because already the night after I did the first oil change, put on liquid moly, the idling got so much quieter, and the car was only 1,000K since
The
the
previous
last
oil
dealer
change.
oil change,
Yeah.
and it was already happier then. Um, and, but yeah, I think there there isn't too much to worry about with this engine. At least it's a Toyota at the end of the day. I don't think we've done any damage. It seems to drive fine. It seems to run the same as it always has. And yeah, once we get the leak sorted, it will be a good time. Uh, I don't know. Between the two RAV4s, they're very different vehicles. They're one is about a foot longer in length, I think, maybe more than that. It's like,
It
and
feels longer than that.
it feels longer. Well, because the second gen length includes a spare tire, which is not really part of the car.
Right.
I think that number includes a spare tire, but the new one is about a foot longer than the old one. Big difference in terms of traction control. Traction control,
Do you, you mean one has it and the other
one
just
has
does
it
not?
and one does not. One has a trail mode, one has nothing, and no
Nothing.
ABS, no traction control. Traction control is huge. People don't think about it off road. I think when you ask the old school guys, they like, you need 4 low, which, and a lot of vehicles even turns off traction control. And but traction control actually in theory can work better than a locker, and it can work better than 4 low. But you have to have a really good system like the A track kind of system, like those, or anything Land Rover has really good traction control. And those use the brakes to basically simulate a limited slip or locking diff, and it's able to conquer so much more in a much more peaceful manner, where you don't have to worry about breaking your vehicle. I
Mhm.
think traction control is not mentioned enough when it comes to picking out an off-roader. And I realized that when when we first put this out there, because I'm like, there were a few times where um, I didn't think we actually had an obstacle, and then the car was slipping more than I thought it would in the second gen, and I'm like, oh, right, it slightly lifted that tire, and it unloading it a little bit, it just spins, and it doesn't know what to do. It just spins. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
it
there's
definitely
nothing.
definitely
Yeah,
ran into a few situations where once the tire was unloaded, the car just loses all forward momentum. Like
yeah,
it's a very momentum vehicle because it
yeah,
doesn't have the traction control, it doesn't have those aids, but because of that, it's also very scary
yeah.
because there's nothing protecting the underside of this vehicle. There's a little bit of plastics, but there's not much there. And and like I have too much mechanical sympathy to just bash on the throttle and just rocket over every single obstacle that we see. I
Yeah,
just can't do that
and
myself.
that's why I got stuck in the hybrid, is in that one spot, is that I I backed off. Like, it was going up, and then I just backed off, and I parked it in the worst possible spot. The
You
front
did.
tire, the front tire had a huge rock jamming up against the sidewall, like jamming up. Like, I should have taken a picture, but the sidewall was no longer like straight. It was like
Oh,
concaved in the front right tire. The rear tire had another giant boulder wedged between the mud flap and the tire. And yeah, like, had I kept going, or had I had a car that I didn't care about braking, I would have been perfectly fine. But because I stopped, and I stopped in the worst spot, I just like, I
you
picked a bad line for one, but also that if I kept sending it, it would have made it. But
Yeah.
you have to not worry about damaging not only your vehicle, but if you damage your tires on the trail and you don't have a spare, like that's you're kind of SOL there too, right?
Oh, you still
Uh,
have the compact spare underneath. That's it,
yeah,
right?
it's a donut. Like it's not even a real, it's not even a real spare, and it's useless.
It's time to throw a
Um,
real spare in your vehicle, I
yeah,
think.
I do have 6-ply tires. They're extra load. They're not C load or E load, but they are 6-ply, which is better than average. I think the ones we have on the little RAV4 might be 4-ply. They're a bit lighter, which I wanted specifically for that reason. The ones that we put on the smaller RAV4, they only weigh like 30 pounds a tire, which is incredible for how much tire we got out of it.
Yeah.
But the trade-off there is that you don't get kind of the beefed up reinforced sidewalls and whatnot.
I
But
think for what we're going to use the RAV4 for,
yeah,
the tires that we have on it's perfectly capable. And what I like about it the most was actually something that you said right at the start is like, check out how quiet it is on the highway. And when
yeah,
we're driving it, I was like, this is actually surprisingly good because I've driven a lot of like um trucks with like AT tires on it, and like even like the Dura tracks, those are pretty loud on like a Ram 1500. And
yeah.
the Ram 1500 has really good sound deadening on it to try to quiet down that cabin. And even on that, like you hear it just winding along the highway. But in
Mhm.
this, it was quiet. Like it was actually a very pleasant experience. I
Yeah.
didn't have to turn up the radio or anything like that.
I think that is kind of the case with the new breed of all-terrain tires, the Toyo AT3, the Falcon AT3Ws, and the BF Goodrich KO2, which is not so new. It's like over 6 years old, but people still gravitate towards it for whatever reason, um, even though it's more expensive and does not perform as good in the snow.
I think
Uh,
KO2 is like Kleenex,
it
you
is.
know?
It's like it is the basic B word tire in my opinion, and it's like it was the JK Wrangler tire, right? Like that is we're not in that generation anymore. We're phased out for KO2s. My F-150 is KO2, so I had all three of these super popular tires, and I can tell you that the Toyos and the Falcons are a huge step up in terms of wet grip. The Falcons, I haven't tried the Toyo yet in the snow, but I had the Toyo 82 on the F-150 before, and those are also better than the KO2s in the snow. I think it's just the tread pattern. They have a kind of more directional tread pattern, perhaps, whereas the KO2s just kind of got that knobby puzzle looking uh, tread pattern and just maybe not as good for evacuating water and snow. Um, so yeah, Toyo, I think they make an awesome tire. I'm a big fan, and I like to keep it within the family because this car came with Toyos from the factory. That was kind of a nice nod to the RAV4's roots. Was that the spare tire is the original from 2002, and it's a Toyo, and so we're still running a Toyo
Yeah,
tire.
we should probably
Yeah,
not use that
we
spare.
won't really that spare tire. I don't even know how we would put it on, to be honest, because I don't. I left the wheel lock. The wheel lock is no longer in the car, and there's a wheel lock on that spare. Uh, we might invest in a real spare because you can't really run that kind of compact spare. Well, now it was a full size spare. Now it's considered compact. One thing I must say about the old Rav4 is that even though we went up significantly in terms of tire size, we went up from a 215 to 245. We went up from a 28-inch tire to a 29.5-inch tire. Basically, well, what would be known as a 30-inch, really. Uh, the car drives fine. The I think the automatic gearbox in this is geared quite aggressively, very short first gear, and around town it doesn't feel any slower or like you're working the car too hard, which I really like about the old car because the hybrid when I put the big tires on, that was a huge hit in terms of fuel economy, in terms of acceleration. Um, because the car originally had 28.5, and I went up to 30.5. I went up 2 inches in terms of diameter, and I went up about an inch in terms of width, and I went up a little bit in terms of weight, and I could tell right away. But with the second gen, I couldn't really tell that my tire was a lot bigger, and in some ways it's faster. Like when I'm just idling, like let off the gas, let off the brake at a red light or a green light and the car already just goes, like it just um that was kind of cool.
Speaking of big hits, at 12:48.6 within the video, if you do get a chance to watch, Dustin decided to take it up the bottom of
Yeah.
his RAV4.
If you watch my video, you'll hear it because I'm recording it and I just dropped my GoPro. I'm like, oh shit, what did we do? And it's like, boom. There was two big hits basically from that one giant boulder. But at least on the hybrid, I've got about 11 inches of ground clearance. So it wasn't like a free fall onto a boulder. It was just kind of dragging.
Yeah.
But it damaged a brace that's kind of in the middle underbody of the car, which it
For
doesn't
the
really
gas
need
tank.
to be there. No, not the gas tank brace.
That's
The
not the gas
one
tank
by
one?
the exhaust.
Oh,
The
that
gas tank
brace.
is a strap. Like there is like a structural brace that's kind of near the front mid of the car. That one got damaged. The muffler got bashed in pretty good because the muffler seems to always be the thing that drags on this car.
It's fine. Just take the muffler off. Just cut it off by now.
That's why there's hangers, anyways. The rubber hangers are there to absorb some of that bump. At least the tips didn't get damaged because
There's no
the
tips
were
anymore.
because I yeeted the hell out of those tips. They have been cut off, and it is a lease. Don't listen too closely, Toyota Canada. I'm sure they're not listening to our podcast, but
Yeah. I don't think
yeah,
they'll check neither. I mean, it's the bottom of the car.
they're not gonna check, and
I
I'm
don't
not
think.
gonna return that lease.
Oh,
Yeah, the only like, there's no way I'm returning that car. Like I love that car too much.
mm.
It's probably the favorite car I've owned,
Until
second
the
to the second gen RAV4.
ooh,
Ooh, I don't know. No,
until the 2025 or 2026 version of the RAV4 comes out, and it's significantly better on road, better off road, with a better trail mode, better ABS system, better everything. Then you'll be like,
yeah. Well, the current hybrid one has basically none of the off-road tech
it
that
has
you would
trail
find.
mode.
It has a trail mode. I can't tell you what the trail mode even does.
It puts a
It
light on
changes
your
the
dash.
graphic on the
Yeah,
dash.
that's so cool. That's all you need.
The traction control works, but we did a little diagonal slip test a little bit. There was a little I don't know, path by the Hale Creek shelter there, and where we could test when the car had two tires unloaded and what it would do. And the traction control works on that car. It works decently enough, but you could see it doesn't grab the brakes all that hard. You still need to have good tire traction to get out of whatever situation. It's not that aggressive of a traction control system where it will, that lifted spinning tire, it will not just jam the brakes on it. It identifies it. You can see it on the screen. It will
Oh,
flash
absolutely.
orange on whichever tire that's spinning. You can see where power is being sent, but traction control only goes so far. If you don't have the right tire for the job, if you don't air down, it is still limited to what is. I think next, if I'm planning a trip possibly tomorrow, we're gonna go fully air down. Like we're gonna go down like 20 or lower psi on the. I'm not sure which car I'm taking actually, but I'll probably
Just take both.
I
Park one, walk back, and drive the other one
if
up.
one gets stuck, I should just flat tow the other one, put it in neutral, and then tow it behind the other RAV4.
There you go.
Yeah.
Then you can have both.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say? I forgot what I was gonna say. I completely forgot. Never mind.
Okay.
I think the only thing to kind of end off today's podcast here is just what's next for the little RAV4 here. We have the lift coming, so we have spacers essentially. It's not springs. So we got that coming. We want to do the what's it called? Under body protection,
Protection.
skid plate kind of thing. Right now, I'm kind of in between material choices. I want to do aluminum because it's lighter, but I also don't want to do aluminum because it's more fragile. But I guess I gotta see. I think that's really the next two
Yeah,
things, though,
we
right?
got lighting. The lighting has
Oh yeah,
arrived, but we haven't started on that. But okay, the thing is, we're probably not camping in this thing, and so wherever we're going, it's probably going to be during the day. So lighting is not really a major priority.
we're
Hey,
putting in
what
the
if we
hood
did a
scoop, right?
light in the hood scoop? I was just thinking. I'm looking at the where
I'm,
you
yeah,
paused
I'm
the
just
video. I'm
looking
like,
at the image
hey,
right
we could
now,
put
the
a little
front
light
end.
bar. Okay, but a light bar that would fit in the hood scoop is gonna be so useless compared
Oh,
to
I
already
wasn't
the
thinking
HIV
that. I
headlight.
was thinking of the the
The marker
the
lights.
TRD, the marker lights, the three or amber
I
ones.
bought a kit because I had a customer that requested it for his GX.
Yeah,
So I bought a kit of 20 of those lights. So we have he only
20.
needs 3 of them.
Oh,
So we just need to
20 of
wire that.
20.
That's how they sell it. The
That's
20
perfect.
20 lights. So
We'll use 5, 3
yeah.
in the hood scoop and 2 on the outer edge on the fenders.
Yeah. Oh, but let's talk a little bit about okay, if you're inspired by our off-road project, just know that the community is a big factor of off-roading. Uh Luckily
Community sucks.
I bumped into a friend on this
Oh,
trail right before we got stuck, or I got
you
stuck.
got stuck.
And it's like it was kind of nice to be able to bump into other people and like have a good time. And generally when you're out on the trail, you meet some pretty good people. There are a few bad apples. We encountered one on our way back. A
Yeah,
guy in an FJ that just decided going 100 down a Forest Service road was reasonable. Um, he was upset that we held him up. But okay, drive around us, I guess. Loser.
yeah,
Um,
over the cliff.
yeah, what are you even doing at Hale Creek in FJ? Like, this not even. It's not your trail.
uh,
Uh,
but yeah, the community is definitely a huge part. The community is what's going to get you guys going, out
mhm.
there, explore. Here in BC, like there is a
There's a
soft
lot
roading
of
group.
groups actually.
There's a lot of groups. I'm in this BC soft roading group on Facebook. Like some members are pretty excited to see this little build and happy that we got out there and enjoyed our like ourselves and had a good time. But there's other people that had like FJs and like full on big rigs that are saying it's like, oh, I went down there with my Ram 2500 Power Wagon with no issues. Well, of course, your Ram 2500 Power Wagon is an $80,000 vehicle with stock 35-inch tires. I'm a little RAV4 that cost us
Yeah, with
$4,000.
zero articulation.
Yeah,
And like I feel like if you have a body on frame SUV, you already are disqualified from being in the soft roaders group.
yeah.
And I see guys with triple lockers, 35-inch tires, 37-inch, and up to 40-inch tires in that group. I'm like, you do not belong in here. You should not be in this discussion because it's such like toxic masculinity that goes on in these groups. That there are people that are very upset by it, and you can see in the comments. So just go to the Soft Roaders, BC Soft Roaders Facebook group, and you can see the comments on Jimmy's video. It's
Yeah,
just like it's quite divisive, but I think a lot of guys that have similar vehicles are excited about it, and then guys that have something with 33s and up is like, what the hell, this is
this is
nothing. Like,
nothing. Yeah,
oh, that's so cute, you went down, like very condescending and whatnot. And it's like, why are you in this group just to be
there
condescending?
there are like a few RAV4s that posted, and they look actually kind of cool. One of them is like camel colored as well.
I've seen that one at the airport actually. I haven't seen it
Okay.
off road, but
But like they're saying it's like, hey, why don't we plan something, go out next week? So I'm actually
yeah.
inclined that next time we go out to give them a
Pun
holler,
intended.
see see if they want to come out, because I have a friend
Yeah.
with Subaru Crosstrek that wants to take advantage of
Mhm.
these off-road trails as well.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing is when you start sharing, then people get excited, and I think we have to look past the fact that there's these negative Nancy's out there and kind of Debbie Downers that there's no ultimately the community grows and there is an enthusiasm for this type of light duty off-roading.
Mhm.
It's not rock crawling, it's not Moab, but um it's people out having a good time. And I think we
Yeah.
have to overlook the negativity. And I think the negativity is honestly a small amount of the group because a lot of the less vocal members don't have big 30-inch 33-inch tires and locking diffs. It's just people out there to go camping and whatnot. It's just recreational. Like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. I mean, even when we're on the trail, we met there was two guys and foreigners. I mean, I stopped to talk to them for a little bit, and they were just surprised and impressed that we were able to make it down with no issues. Because when we did get to the bottom of Hale Creek, I saw them there. I was like, "Hey, looks like you're exactly the same place that we are."
And then Jimmy got stuck on the way back.
I
And they
I
just
chose
came out to watch
I chose a I chose a
right
really bad
after.
line. I chose a really bad line there. That was mostly me. Let's be honest. That was mostly me. Uh,
It was just, well, it's not even a bad line. It was just that it's like risky. It's like you have the thing with any kind of motorsport and auto sport experience is that you have to put your ego aside, right? And where you got stuck there, I'm like, there's a few rocks that I would not want you to run over. And so I yeeted those out of the way because it just, you have nothing to prove that you can, like, you don't win anything at the end of the day. But if you puncture your oil pan, then you'll lose. And so it's like, there's nothing to really prove. Uh, Ultimately, just get out there and have a good time
that's
is
that's what
the
it comes down
lesson.
to.
Yeah.
That's definitely what it comes
If
down
you
to.
have to take an easier line than the guy in his TRD Pro, so be it. Like it doesn't matter at the end of the day. You don't need to.
At the
And it's we're in underdog vehicles, and I see this in coming from the motorsports background is we have so many people. We were just talking about how people are upset or condescending because of their more capable vehicles, but we see people kind of like how there's a few Miata guys that and Civic guys that obviously slower car, but they're like, yeah, you this 911 was holding me up, and it's just like it's the same attitude. It's that ego. It's like you feel like you're superior. There's no need to feel superior at the end of the day, and I
I
think that goes for any type of sport or
I
anything.
think the biggest thing here is, like, we took this $4,000 RAV4. We had fun. We got it dirty. That's what it comes down to.
And we came
There's
back in one piece.
there's $70,000 TRD Pros Wranglers that has never touched the dirt. What's more of a waste, right? We had
Mhm.
fun. We had a great time. Like, we made this video. Like, this video wasn't even part of what I wanted to do that day. I just wanted to get out there and have some fun. It's been a long time since I've been, you know, adventuring or soft roading or off roading or overlanding, whatever you want to call it. But I had a great time that day with my brother-in-law. Like, yeah, 140 horsepower, $4,000 tires.
Yeah.
That's
It's
all needed.
the car is so good too because like I've been using it as a daily and I've been moving like picking up some parts with it, picking up tires and stuff for the company. And it's like it works and it's reasonable on gas. Oh, speaking of fuel economy, we got the same fuel economy on both vehicles.
Oh yeah.
I don't give a crap about fuel economy when I'm out on the trail, but even then, it's the hybrid has always used less than half the gas that the full size trucks use.
Foreigners,
Uh,
FJs.
and so the little RAV4 is in the same company where
Yeah.
it is in that use half the gas kind of.
Yeah, I was
ratio.
actually very surprised when you told me that you filled up the exact same amount that I did.
Yeah, it was like 0.3 liters less or
Yeah.
something like that. But I leave the car running. I leave my heated steering wheel and heated seat on when
Oh.
I park and everything. And it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, I'm like, it might save me $2 of gas if I were to just turn it off whenever I had to, not rev the piss out of it and stuff like that. And it's just like I don't know, like it's pretty cool to see us doing the same trails that okay, we went on the same path and we came across because we went down the easy way, but we still came across some pretty capable vehicles, like pretty built up Forerunners and Jeeps and other various pickup trucks. And it was like we did the same thing with less consumables at the same time.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't as easy. It wasn't as easy for us, but that was the fun of it, right?
Yeah.
It's not that if you could do, let's say same, going back to motorsports, like if you could do sub 120 at mission, like you're in good company, but you can do that with your eyes closed in a 911. So it's like it's not no longer a achievement, I feel
Yeah.
like. But I think it was more fun having to work harder and still spend less.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it because our tires cost less, our fuel costs less, our maintenance is less. Like a control arm is nothing on this car. Shocks cost nothing on this car. That's the beauty of it because it is just a little light duty Corolla. Basically, the
Mhm.
maintenance and the parts associated with it are cheap, and that's going to be the case with anything. Like, we've been ordering a bunch of these SPC upper control arms for the Toyota trucks. They're like $800 a pair for the adjustable caster and camber and toe and whatnot. Just a pair of upper control arms are like 800 bucks for those trucks because they're huge. Like when the weight, there's so much involved in making a heavy duty capable truck that everything is just gonna cost more. Your brakes are gonna cost more because they're bigger. Tires are gonna cost more because they're bigger. 37-inch tire is going to cost the same as it's going to cost a lot more than the 30-inch equivalent. There's no way around it. And then obviously there's fuel. And the RAV4 has such good road manners. That's the thing. You can, a Wrangler, even a JL Wrangler, which is already as nice as it gets for a Jeep, I feel like. Like for a Wrangler, I
For
guess.
Wrangler, yeah.
Yeah, a Grand Cherokee is way nicer. But that car feels sketchy on the highway.
Yeah.
Way worse than this RAV4. I could go speeds in this RAV4 that I'm very comfortable doing 20, 30 over the speed limit. And
But you wouldn't do that because
we wouldn't do that. We don't advocate speeding. But
no.
like
We
the
only
car
drive at the
driving
speed
at
limit.
the speed limit felt slow. Whereas I've done the speed limit in a Wrangler and you get a crosswind and you're like, holy crap, because you're so high up in the air and the recirculating ball steering wheel just feels sketchy. There's so much compromise that also comes with
Yeah.
having a body on frame, solid axles, the stuff that quote unquote makes a car capable is also what makes it a compromise when you have to live with it on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And having to not being able to get into any underground parking lots. Actually, my hybrid is already getting to that point where there's a few underground parking lots where I will hit the roof rack on. But
Oh, it's okay. It's just a rack.
it's just a rack.
Yeah. But I guess that's really it.
Stay tuned for more. I think
Yeah.
this is kind of the season that and Jimmy supposedly is having almost a month off, so he's gonna go out and do some stupid stuff with
Maybe
this
we'll
RAV4.
have more fun later on in the year, but I'm super excited. So yeah, stay tuned. We're gonna bring you more adventures, more cheap truck or cheap SUV, cheap lifted Corolla challenge information. But we'll definitely speak to you next week. Take care, everyone.